Hello and welcome to MySecurityTV and our Tech and Sec Weekly. My name's Chris Cubbage. I'm the Executive Editor with MySecurity Media. And today we're joined by Michelle Price, the Chief Executive Officer with AustCyber. We're going to be diving into the Australian Cyber Week 2021 and very pleased to be the official media partners technically with this particular week. This will be the last week of October. So looking forward to that. And let me bring on Michelle very, very shortly and we'll just dive into what we've been up to. For those who don't follow us generally or are visiting us back, welcome to let us know where you're listening from. But otherwise, we cover off on aerospace and space, defence and national security, cybersecurity and critical technology, and cities and infrastructure. We should be streaming live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And I believe our YouTube is working. And we'll go for at least 20 to 30 minutes today. Michelle's our only guest. And welcome to say good day and also any particular questions you might have of Michelle or Cyber Week as we go through. And we'll have a call to action at the end of this in terms of some discount codes for those who are looking to attend this particular week. Just to catch up on what we've been doing, released this week, we did a webinar with Tony Anscombe, the Chief Security Evangelist with ESET. Did a deep dive on ransomware. This was very informative. It is available on MySecTV now. So well worth the look. And Tony goes into quite a lot of detail into the scourge of ransomware and that subline there. It's just getting worse and some good business cases as to why you don't pay the ransom from Tony. And thanks to ESET for sponsoring that. Last week, we crossed to Canberra. We looked at national security and intelligence. This was a new report from the Australian National University by Dr. William Stoltz. And it was great to have him paired with John Blaxland. If you want to get an overview of the national intelligence community here in Australia and the structure of our agencies, this was a great episode and got quite a lot of chat, obviously with John on there as well, but very informative, calling for a minister at a federal level for intelligence. And also, as it happens this week, we had the conference convener, Dr. Gabrielle Schneider, who is with the Protective Security in Government Conference that's on tomorrow for the next couple of days. And he's also the project co-lead and senior researcher for Security 2025, a roadmap for the future. So thanks to Gav. It was great to catch up with him again and best of success. We're media partners for that particular conference, again, starting this week virtually, was supposed to be in Canberra. On tomorrow, we've got ClearSale, David Fletcher, who's the Senior Vice President, and Ralph Coy, who's the Australia Country Manager. And we're going to be looking at Facebook and LinkedIn data exposures, fraud trends and prevention frameworks. So stay tuned for that. And also on the 28th of October, and this will be a complement to Australian Cyber Week, we're going to be running a session with Motorola Solutions focused on warehouse and manufacturing in transformation. And if you're across the Motorola platform, this will be very insightful for those that are transforming their business, but obviously in those advanced sectors in warehousing and manufacturing. And a final call for our City Festival of Space. The City is the Australian Space Industry, Technology, Infrastructure and Investment Festival. We've got a range of different events, at least 15 and up to 20 events that are running throughout November. And so welcome to join us for that. And you can still catch the Women in Space session that we ran last week, I think, World Space Week. Thanks to Simon Ray, who moderated that particular session, and thanks to Lockheed Martin Australia that sponsored that session also. And I think in the 2 weeks, I'm going to bring on Lisa Sisson, who is the author of Risk Starts and Ends with People. She's a risk management specialist. And we're going to look at, there's a particular chapter in this book on reputation, revenue, and risk, which stood out to me because everything we're hearing on companies in cybersecurity is they're more focused on their reputation as their major driver for implementing new cybersecurity controls. So hopefully we'll get that insights from Lisa and this particular book. So it's always quite the challenge to write a book, and good on her for doing so. And thank you very much to our sponsor, Secure ID and RSA Business. And if you want to support the channel, check out our Cyber War series on mysectv.shop. And otherwise, that's it from me and the MySecurity Marketplace. And without further ado, I'll bring on Michelle Price, the CEO with AustCyber and also with Stone and Chalk. So Michelle, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Chris. It's so exciting to be back again, and of course to have you in as our partner for Cyber Week with the media side of things. It's so exciting to partner again. I can't believe it's already been 12 months.
I know. Has it been that long already? I think it was the start of the year, right?
That's when the last time you and I spoke, yes, when we did the merger in February. But
that's right.
12 months almost since Cyber Week.
And it's October already. We're finally out of lockdown here in Sydney, at least. Maybe there's a few things we could touch on. Maybe introduce us to Cyber Week. That's why you're here, and maybe just a bit of an overview of where you're kind of getting to. It's a pretty jam-packed program, and this also follows on for a cyber risk meetup we did with AustCyber over in Perth. So hence the discussion started, and the program's still getting rolled out in terms of Australian Cyber Week.
It is, and we've got, as per usual, those that have been to Cyber Week before know that we always put on a pretty big show. It's, across the week, we've got this year, we've got 15 online events, and then there's a smattering of more in-person events for those jurisdictions that can actually do in-person events. And then we've got a series of hybrid ones as well. So all up, we've got, over 25 events again this year. And for those ones that have been delivered online, whether they're the hybrid or fully online events, it's all through Circuit Board City. Those that attended Cyber Week last year would remember that we, produced for the first time an online platform, 100% Australian tech, which we're still super proud of. So you'll see Circuit Board City return this year as the facilitator of all of our online and hybrid events. We've got some new events this year, Chris. There's a couple of really cool ones, actually. We've got some cyber escape rooms. So it's absolutely about how you do an escape room. If you think about an escape room that you might have done in real life, it's all online. It's escaping the cyber attack kind of types of scenarios. So that's part of the social calendar. They're going to be super fun. We've got a traditional style debate with some pretty cool guests happening for that one. We've also got the hypothetical returning this year, which was the most popular event that we ran last year. Last year it was a cyber attack on the vaccination situation, which actually, when we fast forward to now and look back on what that hypothetical situation was, I guess sadly, about 90% of the scenario that was completely fictitious at the time has actually come true. Well, this year we're doing a follow-on hypothetical, which is looking at, a significant cyber attack against a large hospital in Australia. And we certainly hope that this one does not come true. But it's all about stepping people through how to actually respond. And so it doesn't matter what industry you're in, there's an activity for everyone. Several events are going to have some pretty spectacular guests. And so, yes, the piece that we haven't revealed just yet is the full lineup of speakers. I was involved this afternoon with the team around, sort of making sure that we've got the last checks and balances to be able to start advertising who we've got as speakers for those major events. It's pretty exciting. And of course, as per usual, we've got some from overseas as well as the full spread of domestic as well.
We've got Chris Painter going to run that session. That's on the Monday, and that's on Monday evening. For those, I like the way you're opening it up with the hypothetical. As you say, are we ready for a cyber attack on Australia's hospital system? And I take it, without going into too much detail, is that going to be sort of at a national level, not just a hospital, but sort of healthcare? How do you imagine that going to be running on that? Or are we giving too much away?
No, I'm happy to share a little bit of detail to get people a bit hungry for the event. So it is focused on just one hospital, but if we think about those of us in the audience today that know all about what's happening in the cyber industry, but also more broadly around critical infrastructure, we've of course got the SOCI legislation coming in at some point. Yep. And so what we're going to be demonstrating is the ripple effect that can happen through digital infrastructure. That means that, of course, a major cyber attack, but actually even just a minor cyber attack, is usually not contained to one particular geography. So that's a little bit of a hint there. And, we've got a couple of key speakers coming along from the health industry to talk through what would actually happen inside the hospital as well as around the hospital. And then, of course, a good lineup of cyber experts, including Chris Painter, to be able to take through those other dimensions of what, from the cyber side of things, not only how do we respond to that as a business community and, sort of a social community, but also, of course, how we can prevent some of this stuff from happening. So if we look at the crystal ball that we had in our hands around vaccination last year, let's start getting ready for some of these larger attacks that will likely happen over the next couple of years on critical infrastructure.
The only trouble is, I think a ton of that has already happened. We have seen Australian hospitals, Australian local government, Australian schools have been hit, and we have been covering that a little bit more and more. So yeah, unfortunately, but again, when you look at crisis management, you've got to look at the worst case scenario and then work back. So it's a good way to go. The other one that's grabbed my attention, and I've seen a bit of chat around, is the Dragon's Den.
Yes.
You be the judge. Talk us through, and that really fits into Stone and Chalk and the AustCyber. I see the two come together quite nicely there. Talk us through this one.
Yeah, I love the name Dragon's Den. I'll certainly take the credit for that one. Nice. Okay. This is my love. And for those out there that don't know too much about how AustCyber approaches project management, we do OKRs at AustCyber. And I know a lot of organisations Australia-wide are starting to cotton on to the awesomeness that is OKR methodology for project management. And we refer to it as Game of Thrones. And so everything is Game of Thrones themed inside AustCyber. And you can imagine the correlations to cybersecurity. So Dragon's Den is all about coming into the lair and looking at some amazing cybersecurity companies. And it's a bit of a twist on our format, both in Stone and Chalk and AustCyber, around how we do pitch events. And so again, industry knows all too well the Gov Pitch and Sky's the Limit events that we've run in the past. The little twist on this is that, of course, with it being an online event, the audience is going to get to be the investors. So we've got a mechanism that we're introducing for the first time this year. It's part of an interactive feature where the audience will be able to invest in the 10 companies that are pitching in a fictitious kind of way, of course. But of course, it's all about being able to sort of encourage people to think about what it is to invest as an angel. If you're, an individual and think, I really can't be part of this because I see all of the cool announcements that come through and they're all multi-million-dollar. Well, as an angel, this gives you a great way to kind of practice. And if you're a large investor, of course, it does actually give you the opportunity to get exposure to these great companies. But it's also all about the buyers, getting the buyers aware around, sort of what these companies do, how amazing they are. And, the success of GovPitch in particular, Chris, is that I always put together the companies in such a way that you can buy from one or invest in one or actually the entire set. And you're actually answering a whole series of your capability needs. So that one's going to be super, super cool. And, the sort of the Cyberoo dollars, that little feature I think is going to be really fun.
I like it. The other thing we're doing as a bit of a lead up is we're doing some interviews, and maybe if you could give an overview of what your observations are on the cyber skill set. I know AustCyber and Microsoft have signed a partnership this year as well, but we've just done an interview with Sarah Bailey, who's the CFO at Pen10, and that focuses on, let me just get the title right, sharpening the cybersecurity axe in Australia to stay in the race. That's trying to stop us with, I think, the top 6 targeted nation. We're trying to drop that. And then also a lot around the sort of skill set and education. What's your observations been for, say, 2021 on cyber skills? Still doubling down following the cybersecurity strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, it is still the number one issue that when you talk to anyone across the economy, that lack of access to skilled people across the spectrum of technical and non-technical roles is still the number one issue. So if we sort of accept the fact that we keep being attacked, which of course everyone knows that we are, the skills piece is still very, very top of mind for everyone. And so at AustCyber, we continue to disproportionately invest in the infrastructure for the nation around cyber skilling. And that partnership that you referred to there, Chris, with Microsoft, that's part of the federal government's Cybersecurity Skills Partnership Innovation Fund, so colloquially referred to as the SPIF within industry. That is one of the projects awarded under the SPIF came to AustCyber and Microsoft for us to pilot the country's first nationally coordinated cybersecurity traineeship. One of the most critical issues that we do have around resolving this skills issue, now, of course, there's the diversity piece, but on the other side, for the infrastructure side, is those pathways. Once you obtain your baseline skills, or if you're upskilling to move into a slightly more advanced role, or you're moving from sort of the non-technical space into the technical, or vice versa, frankly, what are the pathways that you use to actually access a great job? And for that job to be aligned with your values, your intent, your career mission in the organisation that's employing you, traineeships is one of the missing links that we have in the nation for cybersecurity. And so that's what that's all about. We've got a couple of other things in the works as well at AustCyber, as we always do on skilling. I can't wait to share them with you. We're going to be able to share them with over the coming months. There's about 4 of them. One of them is truly, truly game-changing for the nation in the same way that TAFE Cyber was game-changing. So if we think about the big shift that created within industry and the economy, I'm talking about something that's actually bigger than TAFE Cyber. And that's just one of the things that we've got coming around the bend shortly. So, the skilling piece, there's no two ways about it. I think at the strategic level, when we see the sort of implications of cyber and cyber-enabled technologies like AI and quantum playing a role in AUKUS and everything that sort of falls under that, but even outside of those really big strategic things, cyber is the great use case to see what we have to do to tackle the skills challenges around competence, quality of skills, people's satisfaction in the job, all of that kind of stuff, attraction, retention, all of those kinds of issues. Cyber is the great use case of future technologies that are coming down the pipeline. Of course, we're talking more and more about quantum. Let's not make any mistake here. The intersection of cyber and quantum is actually something that most people can't get their heads around, even just from a technology point of view. If we add the human dimension to that, we need to do stuff on skilling around that now. So all of the infrastructure that we're starting to focus on, the ones that we have built and the ones that are still coming, are going to have those kinds of flexibility dimensions added into them, baked in, so that we are better prepared.
Yeah, it's also, I did a talk this morning to Cybersecurity Asia on AI and data science and video analytics as well. I focused on. So you mentioned quantum, but just on the AI and the video analytics and the sort of that space, there's so much going on even over there. So cybersecurity really slices down the middle of all of these technologies, and so there's no shortage. And I'm just reading the article that our Sarah wrote. Pen10 went from, in 2014, 3 employees, then they're now 2021 at 138 staff. So you can see that rise just in that 6-year period. And I also noticed, I keep an eye on the SEEK, sort of CISA and cybersecurity roles. And I noticed you've got the CISO of SEEK as part of your Dragon Den as well. But just keeping an eye across the SEEK jobs on cybersecurity, it is becoming a bit of a challenge. The list is just continuing to grow. There's no shortage. I don't know if I really want a real job. I'd prefer to just keep doing this and do the observations and the commentary. But it is tempting to kind of go over there on a full-time role just to kind of dive in, because it really is, as you say, a fulfilling role. But then that's where things like culture, change management, all those other things come into play. And we've covered a lot off on career transition, people coming into the industry and bringing other skills into cybersecurity is very broad. And while we're on skills and education, we've got another session. In fact, it's happening, it might even be happening right now. We've got another interview with one of the other presenters, and this is Rebecca Vivian, who's with the Adelaide University, and that's going to be on upskilling and micro-credentialing a remote workforce as well. And that term came out of this conference today in terms of treating people as an endpoint device as well. You've got to keep them as they're part of the edge as well. We kind of touched on education and skills a little bit. Maybe a little bit update on where the TAFE program worked and anything at the school level that would be a highlight of the year for you on that, just to close off on education and skills.
Yeah, sure. I think TAFE Cyber has gone from strength to strength, obviously, with the coordination piece that has come through as a result of AustCyber focusing a fair bit, actually, of our projects fund into that network of TAFEs that the front runners in being able to maintain and continuously evolve the baseline qualifications there for the nationally consistent piece on the Cert 4. But also we've seen the original curriculums that we developed. And when I say we, this is, absolutely the TAFEs, with us just kind of providing that sort of open door and punching down the door and making sure that everybody knew that they were there on the Cert 3, and then, of course, the advanced diploma piece. And again, this is adding to the pathway side of things. And when you think about the role that TAFEs have in the Australian economy, we're now seeing around the world that the TAFE model is starting to be replicated. Once upon a time, but for the longest time, the TAFE model was globally unique. I'm not sure how many people realise that, but we've now got other countries that have started to adopt the TAFE approach, which is fantastic. It's been a fantastic export opportunity for education in Australia. But the TAFE cyber piece, the real success there over the past year has been able to really focus on how the collaboration between the TAFEs can double down on that consistency of quality around the graduates. Really important. It was obviously one of the key things that industry was, appropriately complaining about, that, if we did continue to invest in TAFE level qualifications as an entry point into the industry, well, then the quality of those graduates needed to improve. And so we've really focused on that. And I think the other piece to note as well is that, when we think about some of the things that happened around that collaboration and how to carry that forward, there's been a number of universities, and speaking to, the interview with Rebecca around the Cyber Week session that we've got on micro-credentialing, there's been some fantastic work by some of the universities in partnering with their in-jurisdiction TAFEs to provide recognised prior learning. That to me is also a game changer. If you're a student that is transitioning from one career into cyber, then being able to do a Cert 4 to get that accelerated path into the knowledge side of things, and then being able to take that as a year's worth of recognised prior learning into a 3-year undergraduate degree. For a lot of people, this is truly the way that you can get into a mid-level and above job within cyber and not have to start at the base. When you've already got 20, 25, sometimes 30 years of background behind you, that aptitude piece that comes with those transitioning workers is absolutely desperately what we need. So that's a truly exciting piece for me. And I think the other piece to add just quickly as well is that we've got a lot more employers across the country that are now recognising too the role of having an understanding of those baseline competencies through the NICE framework that, AustCyber has provided the dashboard for through our website, to be able to then look at the aptitude of people against those baseline credentials for roles and really make sure that there is a marriage of a person to the right role. And we're seeing more and more, particularly at the bigger end of town, that people are interviewing people thinking, okay, you're interviewing for this job, but actually once they get interviewed, their aptitude demonstrates that they're actually better for a job that's just over here kind of thing, instead of the role that they interviewed for. And so that's that hidden gem piece that, the stats that we see on Seek and other job advertising platforms not really be able to capture. And I know that the Seek guys are working on that.
Yeah.
Because that's where we see the true translation starting to happen.
Well, I think that sophistication, or maybe the maturity around it, there used to be sort of job descriptions there that were either completely unrealistic or weren't even real in its own mindset. It wasn't even factual in terms of what can be achieved in certain technologies, and the experience expectation around some of those technologies was beyond what the technology lifespan had been as well. Any other calls to action, I suppose, on that? Maybe the other one I had on my list for you, maybe two others. We'll leave 2022 till last, but what about the VC sector and the startups for this year, and maybe a bit of an outlook for 2022? But yeah, it seems to have just slowed off a little bit. Obviously, the pandemic's had a bit of an impact. We still have seen sort of COVID sort of companies taking off. Xero's been doing well. 6clicks has been doing well. A few of the other sort of COVID native, it was what I was looking for, companies. Yeah, any standouts for you and how the VC sector's been performing this year?
Yeah, well, I think that you're absolutely right. We haven't seen the same level of growth in new startups coming into, or generating in the industry compared to pre-COVID times. And so the greatest year of growth that we've seen so far since the 2016 cybersecurity strategy was actually 2018-19 as a financial year. And then we sort of saw a stabilisation of the number of new companies that we're establishing in the country. But of course, we've seen that all but halt during COVID. We've really only seen, as far as I'm aware, anyway, and the team might correct me, but we've seen less than 30 companies start over the past 18 months, which is a massive drop off for where we were. But in saying that, we've had the kind of reverse happen for those for those established companies. We've seen more than 50% of Australian cyber companies grow over this COVID period. Of course, there are some that have not been able to convert the opportunity into growth, largely because of a lack of awareness around what they do, because they're just starting to come into their own as COVID took off. But for those that were known in the market pre-COVID, they've gone through quite significant growth over the past 18 months. And that's across all of the different capability types, so technology and services. And within that sort of 50% that have sort of really seen some rocketing growth, this is anywhere from companies that have gone from a micro stage, so less than 5 employees, through to those that are really sort of pushing up towards the medium-sized businesses like Pen 10, really experience proportional amounts of significant growth. And of course, we've seen the sort of concurrent level of investment happen as well. Now, audience would know if for those that are in the cyber industry, but for those that aren't, there's a little bit of a trick here with cyber, a little bit similar to what is experienced in defence industry, because of the sensitivity around a lot of the investments that get made in cybersecurity. Not a lot of them actually make the front page of the AFR. And so we need to keep in mind that for every deal that you are reading about in the media, there's around about 10 deals that are sitting behind that as well. So that gives you a sense of how much we have seen the activity from the VC environment pick up around cybersecurity. And of course, they're seeing the opportunity to make money out of the fact that the world is being routinely and significantly attacked because of the massive shift into online environments. And all of the vulnerabilities that has exposed. And of course, you've had lots of content made available through your channels, which is awesome around this particular situation. So we've also seen the average size of deal increase. So the average size of investment has gone from being less than $500,000 in the Australian cyber industry side of things, so sovereign companies, to the average size of investment now being over 1.5 million. That's quite significant. Now, that means that, of course, we do have some investments. And last year we saw a lot of the big name type investments made. Secure Code Warrior, Casada had some big rounds. There were many others as well. Pen 10 this year that kind of disproportionately sort of, mean that we edge up. But the point is we're starting to see an uptick, and we're seeing more and more companies become scale-ups rather than sitting in the space of being called a startup. This is a very significant point of inflection. And just to kind of give it a bit more context, the industry in its current form has only been around for 8 years. That's a significant step up in maturity compared to lots of other concurrent industries before us. So this growth, it feels slow to cyber because we work in such a fast-paced environment, but actually when we step back and look at that compared to the rest of the economy, we're performing pretty well. We've still got a way to go to kind of retain that growth and get the pipeline moving again, but we're in a good spot.
Would you say that there's been an uptake or improvement from the sovereign take-up in terms of Australian companies, Australian larger companies taking on and supporting Australian startups? We did hear a bit of frustration from some companies that there wasn't enough. And we still do see American companies coming in and sort of moving into the sector. I mean, that's still good. Competition is good. And we've noticed that European, Israeli and American companies coming in and wanting to open up Sydney offices and the like, which is great. But yeah, the take up from Australian sovereign company organisations and taking on Australian startups in cybersecurity, still some work to do, or you think it's improving?
Great question. And this is actually the focus of the debate during Cyber Week. Do we have the balance right in the procurement space? So on the investment space, I actually think that we have seen a good shift in the right direction in the sovereign company space. When it comes to the customer side of things, who's buying from the sovereign companies, we've still got a long way to go in that regard. A long way to go. And just as a hint, audience, I'm going to drop a little bit of a hint here. I'm on the affirmative team for that debate. It's going to be one of the hardest things I've had to do all year, I reckon. But you'll see who else is on that, and you'll see that it's going to be actually quite an entertaining debate. But I do think we've still got a really long way to go. And there's some work that we're doing at AustCyber at the moment to build on all of the work that we've done over the past 4.5 years to actually really do a sort of a lightning bolt kind of disruption around this and doing it with governments. Government has, particularly at the federal level, I think we can say now, are finally at the point where they're kind of feeling more comfortable with what sovereign companies mean, and that, we can manage through an ecosystem approach how you actually can still give, sort of the deliver on the commitments that we make through free trade agreements, which hint is part of the reason why we do see so many foreign companies turn up in this space. But also still be able to improve the global competitiveness piece at the same time as being able to level the playing field. When AustCyber first arrived on the scene, we had around about 89% of the available addressable market being, addressed by foreign companies. We're still far from it being equal, where we've got, the balance of the addressable market being responded to by sovereign companies, but we've seen a good shift in the other direction. And of course, we can get into some good debates here around, what other countries do, including, of course, one of the very first executive orders that President Biden signed when he became president in the US around Made in America, and how we're still one of the very few countries left in the world that doesn't favour the industries from our own nation. So we do have a way to go there. And I'd say, just on terms of the foreign competition that we're seeing, we've actually seen a significant uptick in the number of European-based companies come into Australia over the past 18 months. We're going to see more of that. And this is a lot to do with the way in which the EU and the UK and Brexit and all of that kind of stuff has shaken out, at the same time as rise in interest and understanding around emerging technologies. Now, what I want to see happen in that space is a methodology, and we're working on this with Austrade and the Global Attraction Task Force out of Prime Minister and Cabinet, around when a company comes into market, at least for cybersecurity, we are partnering them with a complementary company locally, because that way we have less disruption and value chains get expanded rather than contract. So that's my desire, to see how we can kind of make sure that we still have that global competitiveness piece happening, but it's not at the expense of local companies. And so we're going to have a bit of a trick that we can't miss as we come out of COVID around productivity in the economy. So more of that partnering and collaboration is needed, and we'll do whatever we can at AustCyber to keep pushing on the barrow on that one.
Well, the other one I'd probably add is Southeast Asia is still a big market that I still don't see Australian companies doing enough about. We have our ASEAN and our Asia Pacific channels, and we're constantly, active in Singapore. I mentioned we were in Malaysia today. So it's just one of those things. I just think, with a call out to Australian companies listening, is you've got to look at Southeast Asia, the ASEAN nations. It's a big, big market, and they're very happy to talk to Australian companies as well. And I think that's the other one. We're still competing with Singapore in terms of that regional hub. So Sydney, Melbourne, and Perth have also got to be there as well. Well, look, I think that was an easy half an hour. We could probably even go longer. Now, I mentioned the articles. We're going to keep coming out with them. So we've mentioned the video. So if you want to have a look at the sort of Cyber Week hall, and what did you call it? You called it a digital...
Yeah, the digital exhibition hall. Jump in and have a look and see what's going to be happening there. There's actually, I do want to do a shout out on this, actually, Chris. This year with the exhibition hall, of the companies that are exhibiting, over 50 companies are putting forward discounts and specials as part of it. Now, this is not something that's pretty standard to an intangible industry like cybersecurity, but there's some awesome deals on offer there as an incentive for you to go and check out these companies. Some of what the companies have put together is actually truly quite special. And it's also as part of helping customers get ready for when the economy does start to properly open again, and when those borders come down and we can start moving around again, because goodness gracious, we're going to see all sorts of variations on cyber attacks start to happen. So let's get ready for that.
Yeah, and I think I'd take it for next year. You'll still be... It's the circuit board city is what I was looking for. I've just found it.
Yes, circuit board city. Yes, sorry, that's the total environment.
Got it. Okay, and you've got some key sponsors as well. I'm just trying to find them. Any call out to the sponsors, Michelle, if they've come to mind? I know Privasec is there. You've got a bunch of partners as well.
Yeah, our overall platinum sponsor is CyberMerc, which is one of our local sovereign companies, of course. So fantastic to have CyberMerc in there. But we've also got all of the usual suspects in there, which is fantastic to welcome back again, like Palo Alto and the Australian Information Security Association. There's a whole range of partners in there that are just so proud to be part of Cyber Week, which is great.
Sorry, I just found them. So, and then you've got ACE, Secure Code, the Silver as a Secure Code Warrior, Tickaboo, Snare, Pen10, Networking, Avertro. Avertro came to mind in terms of a startup that's been going quite well. Shout out to Ian Yip. Community partner, Airlock Digital. Media partners there. Oh, they're looking pretty good. Australian Cybersecurity Magazine and MySecurity Marketplace. And you've got a range of event partners, probably too many to list out there. Cyber Risk Meetups are there as well. So, yeah, check it out. It's Cyber Week 2021.AustCyber.com. It's also listed on the MySecurity Marketplace. Now, we have a code that we will share out. I'll put it in the show notes for the listing. It's on the MySecurity Marketplace. So it's a 25% discount, and the code is AustCyberWeek21. So for a 25% discount, and I'll put the link in the show notes for that one. And I think that's about it. That was our main one we didn't want to forget in terms of the discount.
Right.
Michelle, 2022, what would be a final prediction? Do you think you'll be, maybe look at Australian Cyber Week. You think you'll stick with hybrid, virtual and physical events? And maybe what's your prediction? I'm an optimistic pessimist. Most people will know that. I wouldn't hold my breath for next year, but yeah, what do you reckon next year will hold out for us?
I think we're going to see some pretty significant incentives coming from not just our own government, but many governments in our sort of, like-minded space to try and get people moving again. I do think that there's going to be a lot of reluctance, though. I think the insurance market is going to have to step up here to help people be able to feel comfortable that if they get stuck for whatever reason overseas or here in Australia, that they're going to be able to lean on their insurance. But I do think that, RSA conference in San Francisco next year, to our partners at RSA conference, who we work with very, very closely. We're also doing an innovation showcase again this year at Cyber Week. They're running in February. They couldn't run it any later than that, unfortunately. I think that's going to be tough. Yep. But we are working on a digital cyber delegation to the UK, everyone, in the middle of the year with the Australian British Chamber of Commerce, our dear partners there. I think we're going to be able to make that one in person. That's my prediction. So get ready for that with some pretty cool incentives around getting people on the plane and over to the UK as part of the FTA and also all things AUKUS. But in terms of the cyber industry as well, I think that it's going to be a little bit lumpy still, is my prediction. I think we will still see the same situation happen now, where there's going to be some capability areas that are absolutely rocket shipping up to the moon and out to Mars, but there'll be other capability areas that will sort of still struggle a little bit as we see the economy increasingly learn what a cybersecurity strategy looks like for their organizations and sort of, have that real struggle to uplift on their maturity. But it will happen. I think by the time we get to the end of next year, we'll have a new normal around what cybersecurity's role is in trying to get the global economy going again.
I think it will be driven by certain industries. I think you're right. I liked your moon sort of analogy there, because space and the space sector, advanced manufacturing, those types of advanced technologies, I think will do quite well. Whereas, say, consumer goods and the entertainment and arts will kind of struggle along, and they're going to take a little bit of time to recover as well. I am renewing my passport. It is expiring within 6 months, but I'm thinking, okay, I'll at least have a chance to jump on a plane and get out of the country for something new. Let's see how we go. I don't hold my breath.
I know it's the air brakes. It's very, very nerve-wracking, but I'm willing to do what we always do at AustCyber and be a bit of a trailblazer and take the bullet if there's one that has to be taken to show that we can do this. We can do this.
I think you're right, and I will try and get the RSA conference as well. I'll go to San Francisco. No problems at all. Look, Michelle Price, the CEO with AustCyber and also with Stone & Chalk, thank you so much. A pleasure talking to you about Australian Cyber Week. That is the dates in front of me, 25th to the 29th of October, 28th, I beg your pardon. So Monday, and then the Friday is also a free. That's an AustCyber day as well. So you got to check out the program. It's too much just to mention. We've already just spent half an hour talking about it. Nice and easily. Michelle, I'll let you go. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll put you backstage. Pleasure.
Thanks so much for having me, Chris, and thanks everyone. See you.
Thanks, Michelle. Bye-bye. All right, let me just close off there. Pleasure to have Michelle back. And like I said, I'll put the links in the show notes. But otherwise, just Google or go to the MySecurity Marketplace. It's right there on the main page. Let me just close off on our reports of the week. Internet Security Report from WatchGuard, the State of Cybersecurity Automation Adoption from Threat Quotient, and ESET, their threat report T2 2021 is out. And just to open up the pages for the State of Cybersecurity Automation, I raised this one today in my presentation for Cybersecurity Asia, and that 41% lack of trust in the outcomes from automation I thought was a bit of a standout, and 92% experiencing problems with automation. So definitely something you need to do in cybersecurity and across the enterprise. You need that automation, otherwise you're going to get bombarded with alerts and the like. But also building trust in those outcomes and avoiding those problems is obviously something that people are grappling with as well. And just to catch up on what we've been doing, we do have our latest editions, Cyber Risk Leaders magazine, coming out in November. We do have the Australian Cybersecurity magazine. We're going to have a special edition for Australian Cyber Week. So that'll be out around the 25th of October in line with Australian Cyber Week. And then tomorrow, I've got Clear Sale, Facebook and LinkedIn data exposures. We'll look at the fraud trends and prevention frameworks with David Fletcher and Ralph Coy. And then a highlight for the Thursday, 28th of October, our webinar with Motorola Solutions. Victor Nigem and Rare, Direct Asia Pacific Channel. And Victor is Strategic Solutions Specialist, looking at warehouse and manufacturing in transformation. And again, that's all part of that digital transformation. And finally, join us for November, our Festival of Space, the ACITI Festival. That's the Australian Space Industry, Technology, Infrastructure and Investment. Just go to aciti.space. The program is there and we're still adding to it, but you've got at least 15 plus events throughout November. Thank you so much. That was our Tuesday afternoon edition. We will be back tomorrow with Clear Sale, and otherwise we'll line something up for Friday morning. Enjoy the rest of your day.